name is Kamala, and we are here with CM Productions. Today, we are sitting right next to a hero, a veteran, the president and founder of the NVF, the National Veterans Foundation, Meshad. Thank you so much for having us here today.
It's a pleasure being here today.
30 years ago, you started the NVF and helped over 350,000 veterans and counting. What motivated you to start this foundation? Can you take us back?
Actually, when I was in Vietnam in 1970 as a medical service officer, I was U.S. Army captain, psych officer. I realized in my year, and I'm also an author on the war, that there were going to be problems for the men and women that, particularly the men, because it was mostly men then that fought in Vietnam. And so when I came home after spending some time in the VA myself, I it was a God shot. I came to California with my girl and was really looking to get away for a year after what I experienced in Vietnam. And within 3 days, I hooked up with my first sergeant that was in Vietnam with me, who was going to college, graduate school here at USC.
Nice.
And the first night, he says, "I want you to meet this famous psychiatrist. He's lecturing over at USC, and I want to introduce him to my commanding officer." Kind of the rest is history. I went over there. I was wearing bell bottoms. I started growing my hair because I was always a flat top, and my beard. I looked pretty scruffy. My girl was this beautiful blonde from Florida. Her hair was down. We were in jeans, and this is 500 people at the #1 psychiatrist in the world talking on schizophrenia. And after it was over, my sergeant ran up to him as a graduate student and wanted to introduce him to me. And he brought Dr. Phil May over to meet me. And as soon as he found out I was a mental health officer in Vietnam, he swarmed me, and there were people trying to get to him. I was like, didn't want the attention. And he set up a dinner date the next day to talk to me about the possibility of finding out why Vietnam veterans weren't going to the VA. And that's really how it started. And the rest is a long story.
So you were one of the pioneers, the first pioneers to study PTSD.
No, I'm one of the pioneers in coming up with a definition of what we know today as PTSD.
Right.
In 1970, there was a New York psychiatrist named Haim Shatten who did a thing in Time magazine and said, "These vets that I'm seeing that are coming back have this Vietnam syndrome."
Okay.
And so all of a sudden, we called it post-Vietnam syndrome, which it was nothing. But we used that in the 70s because we weren't schizophrenic and we weren't character disorders. In the VA, when you went to apply for some mental health disorder, you were either schizophrenic, which I doubt anybody was, or a character disorder, which means you didn't have to get paid or compensated for what we know today as PTSD. They didn't have a diagnosis.
Your organization helps aids veterans in so many different ways, like medical, employment, training, food and shelter. What else does your foundation do?
Well, we go out to the streets. We go on what we call recon. We call it our street team.
Oh,
you
nice.
met Gerald Hillard. He's one of the key people on that team. And we go out and look for campsites where veterans are. Everybody thinks all the homeless are downtown LA, down by the Mission. But actually, the younger vets and those that aren't really mentally ill or totally wasted from years and years on the streets are on the outskirts and in the rural part. And we go out looking, and the team has located probably 16 or 17 sites just in the last 4 years of communities, and we go in there fishing for veterans. So that's one of the big things we do.
So another question that I wanted to ask you that was very important, and it's actually very sad and heartbreaking, but there's approximately 22 veterans that commit suicide officially, right? Unofficially can be more, right?
It's probably 34, but about 4 or 5 years ago, the VA and DOD came up with 22. It could be anywhere from 20, but 22 a day.